Alright guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the plumbing from tank to tank basically. Originally I was going to do the plumbing like this tank to this tank, then that tank to that tank, and then have a meet in the middle here, and then run my line over to my pump. But I decided not to do it that way. I mean, that way is fine, but you're going to have this line here feeding this and the rest of the other two. And I'm sure it'll work, but what I'm worried about is a real heavy rain. This tank filling up much quicker and not having enough volume to go into these other tanks. So what I decided to do instead is put bulkheads, 3 more bulkheads in here, and feed this tank, another bulkhead here, and that tank, another one there to feed that tank. So each tank will have its own 2-inch line going to each tank. That way when it comes down and it's raining, you got more volume of water to be able to go out of this tank to feed the other tanks. Now I hate to have to drill in this tank and put a new bulkhead in, but I'm going to try and do it right the first time. Most people hook them up, it looks like an H basically. Take a line from here to here, and you got a T to over there, and you got the same thing over on the other side, a line going from each side. And like I said, this feeding this and the rest of them with a 2-inch line, I'm sure it'll work, but I just don't trust it for a heavy rain. So what I'm going to be doing is putting in 3 of these bulkheads. Now what this bulkhead is, let me show you a little closer. This is the bulkhead. This is the nut. This is a left hand nut on here, so you got to turn it righty loosey instead. Now this goes on the inside of the tank, and the tank sits up against this gasket, right? Oh, I'm sorry, that's not a gasket, that's a washer. This goes on the inside of the tank, and here you have a rubber washer going all the way around. Then once this is through the tank, you put your hard washer on there, and then you put on your nut. Now this nut only goes on one way, meaning it will not go on this way because of the way the threads are shaped. Usually the threads are like a V, but this one, these threads on this bulkhead, they're designed, one side is flat and the other side is V, so it's more like this, okay? And that's because of pressure. When you have a lot of pressure on these things, the threads on one side is flat and the other side is tapered like a normal thread is. Okay, so anyways, what we have to do is drill some holes in the tanks and put these bulkheads in. It's going to be pretty interesting getting this inside of here. Now I can't crawl in here. The opening is 16 inches. It's kind of tight, and I don't have a ladder that'll fit in there. So I'm going to try to use a long 10-foot PVC conduit and attach this to the other bottom end, and then grab it from out here and pull it through. That's the only thing I can think of doing. Alright, so now what we need to do here is I need to drill my first hole in here. So just to make you understand something here, the bottom of this tank has a radius, okay? What you don't want, let me get this off. The bottom of the tank has a radius. This is the back end where it's going to be seating them on the inside of the tank. This here is 4 inches, okay? So I got to measure the bottom of the tank up to the end of the radius plus 2 inches to get me in the middle of this 4 inches here, because I do not want this part right here sitting on that radius, because if it does sit on the radius, you're going to have leaks. Okay, and we don't want leaks, obviously. So what I need to do is measure up from the bottom of the tank to the end of this radius, so right around here. So I kind of figured it looks like to be about 1.5 inches. So let me mark that. So at about 1.5 inches. Actually, I need to make that over here. So all I'm doing here is showing myself where this radius ends, and it ends right about there. So from here up, it's flat. So now what I need to do is measure up from that point 2 inches, because the back of our bulkhead is 4. So somewhere in this line here, I got to drill my hole exact opposite of the other tank. Alright guys, so what I'm doing here, I just got myself a string, a marker, and then what I'm going to do is from the other end here, bring this out. So what I did is I pulled this string tight till it touched, and then I'll go back and forth, and I'll know about the middle is right there. So that's where I got to drill the bulkhead. Alright guys, so here the bulkhead is 3 inches. Well, it's actually slightly under 3 inches. So I have a 3-inch hole saw right here. I have this marked already. So now I am ready to drill my hole. Nothing like drilling a hole in your perfectly good tank. Put the point right in the middle. Oh, before we get started, get your bulkhead. Look down in there, center it real good, and make sure you're just above the radius here. Make sure this is above the radius. And it is. Okay. That'll work. Perfect. Alright, next thing we have to do here is deburr all this plastic on here. So sandpaper around there, or if you have a deburring tool like this. This was back from my machining days. After drilling a hole, you would clean out the hole like that, and it would deburr the hole really nice. There is another attachment, I don't have it, where I can put it on there and do the inside of the hole also. I don't have it. I'll put a link in the description if I can find this online where you can pick one up. Or just get sandpaper. Works just fine too. And you want to get rid of all that burr in there, because you got to remember that bulkhead seal, that rubber seal's got to go on there, and it's got to seal really nice. Perfect. So it'll be just like this, but from the inside, and that'll seal up against there really nice. Perfect. And deburr all that plastic, and it should be nice and smooth in there to the touch. Should be no burrs at all. Perfect. All the plastic that went in there, you're gonna have to clean that all out. All this stuff here, that's all got to be cleaned out. If you have a wet vac, a shop vac or something like that, vacuum it all out of there and go on to the next one. Well, I hope this works. What I'm going to do is climb up there. And on one end here, this is a 10-foot PVC conduit. I basically put the bulkhead on a string in here. My idea is to bring it down in there right by the hole. I can go in there and grab it with my fingers, be able to pull it through and then take the string off. I hope. And on this end I connected some rope in the event I drop this in the tank and it swings over to the other side there and I can't reach it. So I'll be able to pull it back with the rope. So here it goes. Alright, so there you can see the 3 holes down at the bottom of the tank, and that's what I have to try to reach with this 10-foot pole. I'll see if I can reach this. That's what I'm talking about. Now I gotta take the string off. There we go. Make sure that string dropped. Yeah, it did. Okay. Alright, so that is in. Let me get my washer and the nut. There's this plastic washer that goes on there. And then this nut. Alright, so I went and picked up these nice big channel locks. I think they open up to 5.5 inches or something like that. And we're going to snug this thing up. And that's pretty good right there. Alright guys, so whenever you are threading with PVC or any type of plastic threading, like I'm going to do in the bulkhead, you really don't want to use Teflon tape. Teflon tape is good for metal piping. But for plastic pipe, you want to use a joint compound, pipe dope, thread sealant, like this. Okay, you can use the ones in the tube. They come in tubes. They come in these little jars like this, and it's got its own little brush on it in the bottom there. It's just like a paste with Teflon in it. Okay, what this is a sealant, but it's also a lubricant. Okay, plastic threads, PVC or CPVC, whatever you're using, plastic against plastic, as you're tightening it, it'll feel like it's getting tight, and then it'll let loose all of a sudden. It'll start galling. What it means is the plastic will start rubbing up against each other and almost welding together, more or less. And you can't really tell if it's tightening. So what you need is a sealant like this, where it's lubricant in there, and if that won't happen, you can actually thread it and you can feel it getting tighter and tighter and tighter, because a pipe thread is a tapered thread. In other words, the threads aren't straight, they're a little tapered like this. Okay, so if you were to measure the diameter here and then back here it's about roughly 30 thousandths bigger. Okay, so as you're tightening it, it gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And if you don't have any type of lubricant on there, like this pipe compound or joint compound, it'll gall, and you're not really sure if it's tightening or it's just galling, you know, and the threads are basically welding together. You don't want that. So always use a thread sealant rather than Teflon tape. Now Teflon tape might work sometimes, but it's just not as good, and it doesn't feel as good as you're tightening it. You can actually feel as you're tightening it if it's really getting tight or if it's starting to gall, you know, the threads are starting to stick together. So that's what we're going to use. Now we're ready to put this thread sealant on there. Get it down into the threads pretty good. I mean, this here, just put a little bit in the beginning of the threads, but here you want to make sure you got it on there really good. Now it's going to get messy as you're tightening it. It'll start to build up on the outside a little bit, but it's fine. Ain't gonna hurt nothing. See, I can feel it getting tighter and tighter and tighter without galling. There, it's pretty tight. I'm going to tighten it a little bit with the channel locks here. Probably about one turn after hand tightening. That should do it. I'm going to put a valve right here. Okay, and my idea is I'm going to put this valve box here, and then I'm going to fill it up with dirt and then rocks, you know, right up to the top here. But inside here will be the valve. So that's what I'm working on next. This way I'll have access to the valve. I can turn each tank on or off, and more control with the flow of the water that way. Now that was messy, but I know it's not coming off. Now on these valve boxes, they have it to where you have to put the pipe through here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these off so I can slip this over the pipe, and for whatever reason I have to take these off again, I can just slip them right off. Much better. Alright, so I couldn't go. I was going to put the valves here, but I didn't have enough room. So I decided to do this, and I'm going to put this here like this. I still got to raise this floor, or the base here, up to where this sits like this. Then, and then fill the rest of it up with more of this fill dirt, and then a couple inches of rocks till it gets up to about here. And I think it'll look pretty. Now, one thing I need to explain, these elbows right here, these are for drains. Okay, this is not Schedule 40, although it is as thick as Schedule 40. It's made for drainage, okay, and not for pressure. The reason for it is the part where it slips in, it's only 3/4 of an inch deep. So it's not designed for pressure, although it is thick like the other Schedule 40 stuff. And I like this because it sweeps, the radius or the bend is smoother. Whereas if you get a Schedule 40/90, it's a hard bend, it's a hard right it makes, and to me that it just restricts the flow more. So I went with these. This is not going to be under pressure other than the weight of the water, which is not going to be that much. So these will be just fine. So that's why I didn't go with the Schedule 40/90s. I know they do make them like this with a not such a hard right angle on it, but these will work just fine. They're, like I said, they're just as thick as a Schedule 40, but only the part where it gets glued in, it's not as deep. Whereas Schedule 40 goes in like 1.5 inches or something like that. Here it only goes in about 3/4 of an inch. But like I said, it's not going to be under pressure, so it's going to be just fine. So this is going to work out really good. So I got to do the rest of them, and I'll be done plumbing these things together. I finished up last night as it was getting dark, and it looks like this is going to work pretty good. Now you're probably wondering why I have a ball valve on each side of the line. And the reason for that is I want to be able to isolate each tank. In other words, if I have to tap into this line here or over here for whatever reason to use the water, I can shut off both and be able to tap into that line and then turn it on again. Just for whatever reason, if I have to cut this line and tap into it, I want to be able to shut both tanks off. That's all. And again, this is the main tank, so all the water from the roof is going into this tank behind me here and feeding each tank. And again, I did it that way because it's more volume of water, and in case we get some major downpours, I'll feel more comfortable that the water flow would be enough to fill these tanks up quickly without filling this one up too much first and then having it go over the overflow and wasting it. And speaking of the overflow, in another future video I'll be doing that. What I have left to do is the gutter work has to be done yet, the downspouts to this main tank here, and then after that, once the tanks fill up a little bit, I want to make sure there's no leaks from the bulkheads or from the pipes here. If everything looks good, then I'm going to fill this up with more fill dirt. I'm going to put those valve boxes in here, then fill it the rest of the way up, and then a couple inches of gravel or white rock, and then I should be done. Except for I have yet to do the pump and the pressure tank work to do, and the line going all the way to my garden. So there's still a lot more work to do. So guys, I hope you learned something from this video. Please like, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in my next video.